Kitty Sullivan is in the studio with me this morning, and we're going to have a chat about Africa, where she lives, but we're also going to talk about her growing up in Cleveland. But first, Kitty, let me ask you this. You work for an organization called USAID, USAID. What is it, Kitty?
Yes, so USAID is the U.S. Agency for International Development. USAID is the lead U.S. government agency that implements foreign assistance programs. It's an independent agency. It's not connected to any other agency. Our mandate, our mission, if you will, is to end extreme global poverty and enable resilient democratic societies to realize their potential.
But it is not the Peace Corps.
Not the Peace Corps, not at all. It's not the State Department. It is an independent agency.
But it is U.S. government owned or operated by the U.S.
Correct, exactly.
Now, what do you do for them?
Well, I'm a commissioned Foreign Service officer. My job title is Project Development and Program Officer, which means that in the countries where I work, where I'm assigned, I have oversight for things like strategic planning, project development, budgeting, overseeing the budgets of the countries, of the USAID programs in the countries where we work. Things like monitoring the results of our programs that we're implementing in these countries, reporting on those programs, and also outreach and communication on the U.S. Foreign assistance programs in the countries where we work.
Presently you're stationed in Nairobi in Kenya, but where were you before that? Before I talk to you about Nairobi,
Sure.
I want to talk about where you were before.
I served just before Nairobi in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I was there for 4 years, and before Congo I worked in a country called Benin, which is in West Africa, also for 4 years.
That's one I haven't heard of.
Yes.
How big is it?
It's very, very small. If you look on a map, it's just to the east of, to the west rather, of Nigeria.
The one and only Patty Joe Joyce, good friend of Andy Devers. He's going to be in town in the near future. Hope he's in for the Mayo Ball. Wouldn't that be nice if he was here then? Anyway, Andy told me he was coming. The new CD is out. It's a good one. I think you'll enjoy it. It's got songs like The Irish Jaunting Car, Home to Mayo, Island of Memories, Gallant Kerry Soldier, and so on and so on. There's 17 tracks on it. So when he comes, I'm sure he'll have some CDs with him, and he'll probably distribute some to the Irish import shops, and they'll you'll be able to obtain them there. It's 1 minute past 11 o'clock here on the Irish Show on WHK AM 1420. Now, I tell you what I'm going to do. You know, I have been taking golf lessons at Golf Tech, and it's extraordinary. I played golf with people, and they say that they can't believe how good I've got. Is that the right grammar or not? Gotten or got? Got's the word.
Yes.
Isn't it? Am I saying that right?
Or have become.
Have become, that's right. Thank you,
yes, I would say. Yeah, but Jerry, if you're bragging over there, I think you're doing much better with your golfing.
Well,
are you?
Well, I am. You know, but there are a lot of things to remember, and that's what's great about Golf Tech. It's just every aspect of the game, they address it. And not all at once where it overwhelms you.
Correct.
You take a little bit at
Correct.
a time, and they teach you. And Kevin Sullivan, who's Kitty's cousin, first cousin, he is our teacher, and he was a golf pro. I know, at Shaker Country Club for several years, and other organizations too. He's PGA certified, and also Faith that was in here. Yes. She's LPGA certified. Right. So they have the best teachers. So anyway, he told me to give away one of these swing evaluations. This is what I started off with myself. It's normally $125. And they analyze your swing. They even give you the video that when you're done, it tells you what you did right, what you did wrong. So, why don't I do that right now? If you're the fifth caller, call 216-901-0945. If you're caller number 5, but don't take this unless you're going to use it. It's okay to take it if you know somebody that wants to learn to play golf. This is a good way to do it. 216-901-0945. Number once again, 216-901-0945. I don't know where any station gives away $125 prize.
Oh, I know. Phones are ringing. Phones are ringing. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening.
216-901-0945. Kitty Sullivan is in the studio with us this morning. She works for an organization called USAID. She's stationed in Nairobi, Kenya. Kitty, I would love to get there. My neighbor, actually, Becky Ball, who travels the world, she was in Kenya recently. In fact, she was in Nairobi.
Okay.
And she was telling me about her exploits in Nairobi. And I was saying to her, she must have thought I was a cultural, I don't know what. Well, anyway, I was asking her if she saw any lions and tigers and elephants walking down the street, and she says, "No, Jerry, that's not what Nairobi is. It's a very modern city." What is it like living in Kenya? You can describe it for me.
Sure. Nairobi actually is a very, very modern city. It is actually the nicest place I have lived and worked in my career with USAID. Kenya is very far ahead of the curve in terms of African countries in terms of development. They have a very vibrant information technology, IT sector. They are doing pretty amazing things in terms of the way they administer their government using information technology. There's a lot of private sector organizations and companies, of course, that do business with Kenya as a base for all of Africa, or certainly for East Africa. So it's quite vibrant, very modern, excellent infrastructure, great internet connections, roads. That's the capital, of course, and there's a good network of roads throughout the country. But there are certainly, extreme pockets of poverty throughout the country, which is why USAID has programs there.
I bet you even have a McDonald's and a Burger King.
There's no McDonald's or Burger King, but I can tell you
Really?
Domino's Pizza is there, Cold Stone Creamery, Subway is there, Starbucks is coming.
Why do you think they don't have a McDonald's or a Burger King?
I don't know. There's not a whole lot of those on the African continent, even in places like South Africa. There are a lot of South African chains and such that are established in other parts of Africa, but there is actually a very, very large American business presence in Kenya.
No wonder my McDonald's stock isn't doing well. I better tell them.
Right.
Invest in Domino's.
Yeah.
That's used to be Tom Monahan.
That's right.
Big
Exactly.
time Irish American from
Exactly.
Detroit. Give me just a feel for what you do. What's your routine every day? You work, right?
Work every day. I would say my routine is fairly bureaucratic. It's not quite as exciting as many people would imagine the career of a Foreign Service officer to be. I get up and drive to work. My commute is about 25 minutes on a good day, maybe an hour.
What's the traffic like?
I go against traffic, so, but Nairobi has grown so much in the last 10 years.
What's the population?
Oh boy, you would ask me that. I think the population of Nairobi is about 5 million people. It is big. It's quite spread out. There's a lot of green spaces, so it's a very enjoyable city. But even though the infrastructure and roads there are very good, it just hasn't kept pace with the growth of the city itself. So there's extremely heavy traffic in different parts of the city. But as I said, I go against it, so my commute is not so bad. Get to 10-hour days or longer are actually the norm for me. I do put in long hours. There's just a high volume of work. But I spend the most of my days actually in the USAID mission. I attend a lot of meetings, lots and lots of meetings.
Oh, bureaucracy.
It's a bureaucracy, for sure. So I meet, of course, with USAID colleagues, a lot of embassy colleagues, international donors, international organizations that are in Kenya, a lot of host government officials when we have things to negotiate, and of course partner organizations that work with USAID to implement our programs. A lot of meetings.
Are donations a big part of the funding, or any part of your funding?
They're not part of our funding. We are funded 100% from the American people via Congress.
means taxpayers.
That's right,
Does
U.S.
that mean me?
taxpayers. That means you,
JC
that
and I
means,
am
that's
Connie?
right, exactly. And I would just like to mention that
We want an accountant of our money right now.
I would like to mention that actually there are a number of misconceptions about foreign assistance, and it's less than 1% of the U.S. government budget. A lot of people think it's a significant chunk of what we do, but it's currently about 0.7% of the U.S. government budget.
What about, there's a lot of talk about human rights in Africa. Does that apply to Nairobi, Kenya?
Absolutely. We do have programs, again, working with civil society organizations primarily to promote human rights. There are human rights issues all over the world, and Kenya's not immune to those. So we do, through our programs, address some of those.
Hot button subject in this country, of course, is healthcare. What kind of healthcare have they got in Kenya?
Kenya is a bit more developed than the rest of Africa, but on the continent overall, healthcare is abysmal. Infant mortality, maternal mortality, high number of women who die giving birth or just after birth. So the majority of foreign assistance actually in Africa goes to health programs, helping to address chronic problems in child and maternal health, and of course addressing things like AIDS and malaria.
Well, would an institution like the Cleveland Clinic now, would they ever set up a place in Nairobi, you think?
There are increasingly, I would call that a public sector organization, and so USAID partners with those kinds of organizations, and sometimes funds those kinds of organizations to do development work. Cleveland Clinic, as far as I'm aware, does not have any programs in Kenya.
I don't think they have them in Africa at all. I don't think so.
I don't think they do it either.
They do in Dubai, I think, in the Middle East they do. Talk to me about employment. What's the unemployment rate, or is it hard to even to figure it out?
It's hard to figure out. Depending on the country and the country's national statistics program and how good they are at tracking that, it ranges greatly. Of course, the what we call the informal sector is the majority employer across the continent, and certainly in Kenya. These are people who are just sort of, hustling to make a living day to day, selling things on a corner or what have you. But one of the things that USAID programs does address is helping to increase private sector investment and strengthen private sector employment opportunities, particularly for the youth population, which is extremely high in Africa.
What's the weather like there all year round?
Kenya is beautiful. It's wonderful.
Is it very hot?
No, it does not get very hot in Kenya. It's usually, the hottest it gets is about 80, 82 degrees. There is a cold season where it goes down to nearly 50 degrees, but in general it's beautiful, 75 degrees to 60 degrees at night. Beautiful.
What about environmental problems? We hear a lot of talk about that here.
Yes. It is definitely an issue that USAID addresses. In particular in Kenya, one of the focus areas is counter wildlife trafficking and helping communities to preserve the incredible diversity of wildlife and natural resources that Kenya has. It's known for its animals and its national parks.
What about that storm that was created recently with the dentist that shot the lion?
Oh, yes.
Oh, was that in Kenya?
That was in Zimbabwe.
In Zimbabwe. Yes. But it created a storm all
it
over the world.
did, and I would say my reaction to that was that at the underlying all of that was this question of governance and how resources are governed, and people who have the ability and have the resources to access those sorts of things can often circumvent the law. So yeah, there's huge poaching issues in Kenya. Elephants in particular are at very, very high risk, but all of the wildlife in Kenya is at high risk.
How long do you think America is going to have people like you in the Foreign Service to sustain these countries?
That's a good question. I would say it really depends a lot on the will of the governments where we're working to implement their own programs. Africa, of course, is just a chronically underdeveloped. But I do believe that it's taking off in ways that even 20 years ago were unimaginable. So I would say it really just depends on the continued investments of the private sector, but also of international governments like the U.S. government, and opportunities, the creation of opportunities for Africans. Africans are wonderful people, and yeah, there's tremendous potential, and with continued support, I would hope that in a generation there will be many fewer USAID programs on the continent.
How about education, such as high school and college?
Right, so USAID focuses primarily on basic education in Africa. There's other parts of the world where we focus more on secondary and tertiary education. But because education rates are so low and literacy in general is quite low in the number of countries on the African continent, we focus on getting children into school, keeping them in school, and providing resources and support to host governments to enable them to teach their children to read and write,
So
basically the basics.
the older generation wouldn't have the basic education. So
Actually,
it's got to be difficult.
It depends, actually. It really depends a lot on the country. There are, of course, a lot of African leaders who were educated under old colonial systems, and so some of them have, you know, there in many places there was a sharp decline in education at independence, just because of not many countries not having the resources and the trained persons that they needed to implement national programs at the onset of independence. That's changed a bit, but Kenya is very known for its very well-established system of universities. So Kenya, again, in terms of the continent, is sort of ahead of the curve on things.
Okay, JC, I know you're dying to ask your daughter a question. I hope you're not asking her for back rent from a few years ago when she lived with you.
No, I had a thought about some of your young listeners, Jerry, who might be thinking along the lines of perhaps foreign service, and what kind of pathway got you to where you're at, Kitty. You might share a little bit of that in the event they would want to
Can you do that when we come back?
Sure.
Let's come back and do that, JC. Very good question.
Thank you.
It was one of mine. I was going to ask her. You stole it from me, did you? Good man, JC.
get you another punch.
That's right. That's great. All right. Coming up next, speaking, we have Kitty Sullivan with us. And here's a song, not a song, a piece of music called Rambles of Kitty.
All right.
And she rambles all over the world. Here's John McSherry. Very interesting, Kitty.
It is interesting. It's
You have a
bureaucratic,
very
but it's
interesting
interesting.
life.
Yeah, a positive picture of what they do.
Honest to God, when I said to Becky, my neighbor is a world traveler. She's been everywhere. She got robbed actually in Nairobi.
It's known for that. It's actually much better than it used to be, but it used to be called Nairobi.
That's what she said too. She
that?
said, "You mean Nairobi?"
Yeah. Oh, what a shame.
And she always brings us something back from it, no matter what country she's in. Some weirdest stuff you'd ever see. I mean, it's even odd in the country she visits. But she has a degree in archaeology.
Oh,
Very
fascinating.
highly educated woman. Oh, I mean, well, you met her. Did you meet Becky Ball?
No.
Neighbor? Oh.
I probably did at one of your backyard parties when you used to have them.
Traveler, learned to play the bagpipes a few years ago.
Yeah, cool.
Tortured us all on the street when she was learning them, but nevertheless she did. Lives by herself right on the lake.
Oh, nice.
Listens to this program all the time.
Nice.
Loves classical music. Big into the classics. Travel.
A couple of months with me and my family in Nairobi.
You know what? She's going to be missing the Mayo Ball.
She will be missing it, but she'll be having lots of other adventures in Nairobi.
So JC will be a bachelor here in Cleveland.
You got it.
The debonair continental
Spread the
playboy.
word, Jerry.
Something like that.
Oh my God. My God. Well, Kitty, thank you so much for coming in and giving us, shedding some light on those of us that are kind of ignoramuses when it comes to Africa, but a very modern society. We're glad you illuminated us somewhat. So come back again. When are you going to come back again? It's a long journey, isn't it?
It is a long journey. We try to come back every summer. I don't want to come back to Cleveland in the wintertime. My kids would love to come and see snow, but I'm not so interested. So hopefully we'll be back next summer.
Very good. Well, we're going to have to wrap up the program now, and here's Connie. Have you got anything else for me?
No, I just wanted to say, you know, out at the Westside IA, the 51st annual Clam Bake is Sunday, September 20th. That's going to be an awesome event, and Friday, October 9th is the K-Fori Ladies Reverse Raffle, ladies only, and it usually is a sellout. The East Side Club, they have the Shamrock Shuffle 5K, and that's September 26th at 9 a.m., 2-mile fun walk and a 5K run. But lots of great things going on at our clubs. Thank you for our Westside Irish Club and our East Side Club.
And Monday, Labor Day evening, I get out and watch the Buckeyes play at the Hibernian Hall in Akron. My division, St. Brendan division, will be hosting it, so hope to see you there.
And you are listening to the music from Pat Quinn, Frank Quinn, and Sheila Dorley from Chicago, Illinois. Here they are.